Hello, and welcome back to the Bomb Squad. We are putting a little pause on our Texas Chainsaw Month that everyone loves and is totally not our least listened to series. And we're going back to our Summer of Guests, which is now Fall of Guests. And we're talking to some filmmaker friends of mine. We're talking to some of the members of Monstrous Femme.
Hi, thank you so much
Hi.
for having us.
No problem. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what Monsters Femme is?
Yeah, sure. My name's Emma, and I'm here with Hannah as well. We are the co founders of Monstrous Femme Films. We're a queer feminist film collective with a focus in horror and genre film. And yeah, basically, our goal is to carve out a space for young women, non binary, and queer folks in the horror genre, both in front of and behind the scenes. And yeah, as a collective, we're focused on producing, progressive political horror flicks by a variety of diverse voices. And yeah, Hannah, do you want to talk a little bit about our previous films?
Yeah, so we have two films that we've put out already. In 2018, we did Fanatico, which is a sex positive neo giallo. And in 2019, we did a summer camp creature featurette that's called Camp Calypso. And we are about to begin production on our next film, which is a 70s prom night pro choice body horror titled Baby Fever.
Cool. And will you tell us what your roles are on? Is it always the same? Are you always the writers and the directors, or is it producing,
Yeah,
etc.?
we
Yes.
kind of
So
bounce around a little bit, but on Baby Fever, Hannah is directing and writing, and I'm producing and costume designing.
I think, like, if you look back at the history of horror, there's so much that is progressive about it. But I feel like, as someone who's in a marginalized community, and I think you guys would agree, that there's, even though they do tell a lot of marginalized stories, a lot of times it's not the writers or the directors who are also marginalized groups. And I think it makes such a big difference. Do you guys think that being, telling these kind of progressive stories, and you guys yourself being, progressives and kind of marginalized, do you think that that gives you a unique perspective to these stories?
absolutely. That is kind of our main goal with Monstrous Femme. And what we've done with our past few films and the current film is, we're telling stories that we have seen before, but with an entirely different perspective. And we're kind of reclaiming the exploitation of 70s horror cinema. And, we're just telling it through a different lens.
Do you want to talk a little bit about Baby Fever?
Yeah, so the logline is a popular teen's dream to be crowned prom queen is threatened when she gets pregnant with something even worse than her dumb jock boyfriend's offspring. So it's inspired by, prom horror, so Carrie, Prom Night 2 especially, but also pregnancy, womb, like uterus horror, so Rosemary's Baby, The Brood, um, Ginger Snaps, and we're kind of playing with a lot of different subgenres and giving it like a modern twist.
Kind of has that, like, a little bit of snark in the log line. I like it.
Thank you.
um,
Yeah, it plays very much like a teen movie. It's almost like a chick flick. Where we're joking, we want to make like a chick flick if Cronenberg directed it. I mean, I've been writing this for 2 years with my co-writer Alex, and kind of working on this with Emma for just as long. And I knew that it was going to be very expensive. So I've been saving every penny for the past 2 years to invest in the project myself. But we're also currently fundraising on Seed and Spark. We're trying to raise $8,000 with a stretch goal of 10,000. And we've got a lot of really cool incentives and perks for people who want to donate. And you can read all about the project and watch our gory little campaign video we did together. And it can kind of give you a better idea of, our vision and the film we're trying to make. And that is ending on October 30th.
cool. So that ends this week, guys. So go, like, you can look right now in the description and click on the link and then go support this film. I think, even if, if it sounds interesting in any way, or even if you just like the idea of independent film or horror films. And if you don't, why are you listening to my podcast? But if you do, go support it. I think supporting any kind of independent film is always good, and especially this one that sounds interesting. I mean, if you've seen Camp Calypso, you know that they got what it takes to make a cool, fun,
Oh,
like little
thank you,
short.
Andrew.
So yeah, that sounds good. I think that's cool. That it sounds like it's gonna be good. It sounds like we can help, and that'd be even better. So guys, like I said, go look at the link below, and now we can talk about our the movie we picked. Or well, we didn't pick it. This one we let our guest pick. And so the movie that we're talking about is a movie called Baby Blood. And on the Bomb Squad, we like to be obscure, but this movie is definitely even more obscure than we usually go.
It's
Uh,
unavailable. Yeah.
Just
yeah,
hard to find anywhere.
yeah, and it's interesting, like when you find these kind of super, like to think about what movies people pick. I love that you guys picked this one. Um, so let me do some of the technical stuff that I like to do, and I like to mispronounce names. Guys, as always, bear with me as I try to pronounce any of these names. So, Baby Blood is a um, 1990 horror film. It is a French horror film, which is always cool. It was directed and co-written by Elaine Robic, and it stars Emmanuel Escororo.
All of these will be pronounced incorrectly. So
Those are mispronounced. Josh, why don't you tell us what this movie is about?
why are you putting this on me?
Put the hot seat on you, buddy. I've been carrying this whole podcast.
A woman has a problem. that's my
Perfect.
description.
Okay, so why did you guys pick this movie? I mean, there's obviously connections, so we want to hear.
Right.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Baby Fever, Baby Blood. Yeah.
Yes, we actually watched it. We both watched it this past year. It was really well, we picked it for the podcast first of all because we felt that it was deeply underseen, and obviously probably because literally how can you find it ever? That's probably why no one's seen it. But yeah, we watched it kind of in the midst of developing Baby Fever. And there's definitely, when we were kind of in this process of watching we were just digging at the bottom of the barrel for any films that are womb horror, uterus horror, that kind of thing, just to kind of get us inspired. And just kind of see what was out there that maybe we hadn't seen before, and somehow we stumbled upon this film. And yeah, I love French horror. I love Euro horror. But I truly have never heard about this. And I actually just found out today that there was even a sequel called Lady Blood that was released like 18 years after the first one. And I'm like, wow, that's even more obscure. Maybe we should have picked the sequel that literally I've never heard of in my life. But yeah, it's just kind of it's a film that I think Hannah and I both actually quite like. But yeah, just not enough eyeballs on it. There's also a lot of reviews that are actually not that great, or even just mixed reviews. I think people kind of read the film differently, and so there's not really one sort of unanimous voice when it comes to the reception on this film. But generally, the reception's relatively negative or just kind of sexist and strange.
Oh
But
yeah,
I kind of think it's a great movie. I think Hannah feels the same. But yeah, that's kind of why we picked it.
cool. Yeah, you know what? I didn't even think to check in the reviews because it was so hard to find. I didn't think we would find anything.
Well, it
All
was one of those
two.
things too. I checked I was like, oh, let me see what they say on Wikipedia, and it's like they cover the plot in about 3 sentences, which omits like the entire theme of the movie with like men and
Yeah.
everything. It's like it describes how the alien works, or the parasite, and that's
Yeah.
it. So it was
The first
very
like
strange.
15 minutes of the film, and then they're like, we'll finish it later.
Well, and you almost feel like this is one of those movies that it's going to be hard for a lot of people to read, just because it starts off in a circus, and you think that that's where you're going to spend the majority of the film, and it kind of moves along, and you're kind of going with this girl, like you're following her journey. And I do feel that, like, I wonder if people were like, well, what's going on, why are we flopping all over? But I think that's why I liked it so much, that it kind of explored so many different places.
I definitely remember my first time watching it and being really confused as to why the circus happened at all. I was
Yeah,
like, "Wait, what? Why is this the same movie? Like from the weird intro to the
right.
circus to now we're just in the city." Um, it was very strange, but I like it. I mean, I guess we were basically seeing a little bit of Yanka, the main character's like backstory. So
Right.
I get it, but it was like maybe it was the way it was edited, just felt very stark, like very suddenly
Yeah.
the circus didn't exist.
Right, right. And but I
I
kind of I like that I anytime we see a foreign film and they go to a place that's familiar to us, but it's from their point of view, like a circus. I always love when horror films do that, or films in general.
Mhm.
Yeah, I kind of wonder. We came up with the same dilemma when we were writing Baby Fever, but um, I wonder if they, wrote the whole film and then they were like, "But where does the creature come from? How does it get in her?"
Right.
And they were just like racking their brain for an origin story, and they were like, "Okay, let's do circus."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Why
a
not,
clown
right? Why
car
not?
drove like by their window and they're like, "Oh my god, I figured it out."
Yeah, yeah, like
Probably.
I kind of love that. That's what I'm hoping happened.
It feels like a
Yeah.
pickup shoot for sure. Like that they added
Yeah.
that for
Well,
sure.
and I was reading on it, and they were like, oh, a lot of the guys that were at the circus were like playing themselves, and it's like I don't know, maybe the director just knew these like
Yeah, maybe the circus was
circus
in
Interesting.
guys,
town. The
you know,
circus was
and
in town and they went
yeah,
over
it's
and they
just like
asked, "Can
that's
we
fine,
shoot?"
yeah.
I feel like it can be on the surface level, first watch, it feels like a pretty progressive feminist film, but I do feel like it's a bit of an accidentally progressive feminist film, or kind of a low-key feminist film, because I do
Yeah.
feel like um while there are a lot of like blatant themes and dialogue that kind of drive the feminist intention home, there also is a lot of time that Yanka spends, just like trouncing around nude. And it kind of leaves little doubt that the film was made by a cishet dude.
Yeah.
And it is, and on top of that, I think that she is placed into a lot of scenarios that are relatively degrading. And so I think for me, it's hard to sort of decipher what the intention behind the film was.
What I
Use the
think
word
is
drug.
stranger too is that at the beginning it kind of cuts around it where it like shows her getting dressed or whatever when that like pervert guy's leering at her, but it never shows anything. But then later it just kind of does, and you're like, oh, is that a mistake then? Like just an editing thing?
Yeah,
Like
like
you
which
forgot
which
to
was
show it at the
intentional.
beginning, but you filmed it. Yeah. So no, I agree with that. I'm like, what's what was done deliberately here? You know.
Because to me it was about that weird, and it's something that isn't really addressed in film, where sometimes women are pregnant and they don't want the baby, and especially Yanka, who's like she's lived in this kind of patriarchal world where like all the men have kind of treated her as an object, and then she gets pregnant with a child who's also using her, and so she kind of resents it, but she's also it's still her baby, and it's very conflicted. And I feel like once you get to that like theme of she kind of or she doesn't want this baby but she also loves it, it kind of shows and expresses like how anyone feels when they have a pregnancy, unwanted or wanted, where it's like just a lot of things where you're kind of you are changing the world and your world. And so it kind of does that in a way, just with way more blood than usual and more hands coming out of your stomach, you know?
Well, yeah, and
Hmm.
then the kind of the turn where it stops talking to her for a while, and then she's like, "No, wait, please say something."
Right.
Like she feels like alone again. I don't know. That's like a good like. I didn't expect that at first. You know, it was nice.
We were actually talking about that scene because that's where she kills the woman, like the midwife or whatever, who is telling her, what labor is going to be like. And she kills that character without the baby telling her to.
Right.
Um, and we were kind of, we were talking about it earlier, trying to figure out why that is, and um, also why the baby wasn't speaking at that time.
Right. I think it is that thing where the baby kind of, I wouldn't say acts as her conscience, but it does have a way of protecting her when she's from these men that are threats. And like the midwife wasn't really one. And I
Yeah, she was
wonder if,
lovely.
yeah, and I wonder if that's the catalyst where it was Yanka acting instead of the baby
Yeah.
blood.
To protect the baby without
Yeah,
being asked.
right.
Hmm. Yeah, and I have to wonder why, she killed that lady compared to, the slur of creepy men that she was killing before, usually because the baby was telling her to. I think it's interesting that when it comes to someone that she killed, it was just like a nice old lady that was being really supportive.
Right.
Well, also
There's something to that.
the method of murder too. She choked her with the phone cord. But all of the men, have these like bloody, gruesome deaths, and she eats them.
Right.
Like she was almost like respectful of this lady and just, I mean, not respectful, but you know what I mean. Like respectful in
Yeah.
congruence with the
Right.
other kills that she was doing. If you're
Yeah.
going to do a kill, it's very clean.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I don't know. I thought that was interesting. Like she didn't want to kill her, but had to.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I
And
think it's more. Oh, sorry, but I
no,
think
go
it's
go ahead.
more. The other ones are to feed the baby, and this one was simply to get away or get to a
Right,
place where
like
the
out of
baby was safe.
Yeah.
necessity. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I think we cover that a lot because we always watch horror films, or we watch the majority of them. And I think it's very important the way a director will frame a murder, even though like at the end of the day, every character's been killed. But the way you frame how a character's been killed tells you a lot about how the killer thinks about that
Hmm.
character. And I feel like this one was very important, and especially the difference between how bloody every other kill was and this one. I think it kind of shows that it wasn't in the parasite's control, and it was all Yanka.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's definitely an interesting dynamic. And it's a really good, what's different about this film when you think about like parasitic pregnancy horrors and women being inseminated with this creature. um it's been done before Baby Blood, but this feels like a character study of the experience more than sort of a happenstance, or but then again, it's like what I would say about other films that follow that trope is that it's usually feels more or less like an excuse to get a woman naked, and the rest of the film is focused around um the men around her trying to figure it out, like she's the problem. But then this
Yeah.
film, they it is her trying to figure it out, and it follows her exclusively. But then again, I can't necessarily say they didn't use it as an excuse to get her naked.
Right.
The way that I kind of saw it, I'm not. This is me giving it the benefit of the doubt. But I think pregnancy horror is really complicated, and it's about the abject, and it's about, the fear of the female form.
Right.
And I think having Yanka in full frontal nudity for some of those scenes, it did make me uncomfortable, and it did have the same effect on me paired with like the body horror of the film that regular body horror has. It changed my perception of the full frontal nudity because it was paired with that kind of like gruesome gore. So I don't know. I'd like to think that it was intentionally trying to make me feel that way.
For pregnancy horror, I mean, and this might be a little too touchy, but there's that the biggest pregnancy horror film is of course Rosemary's Baby, and I always find myself hesitant to even talk about Rosemary's Baby just because of Polanski and his whole
Hmm.
situation. Um and I do think like obviously you guys have watched more. So what are some good pregnancy horror films that people can watch that aren't Rosemary's Baby?
Um, yeah, well, I mean, personally, I love Rosemary's Baby. I think it's one of the best films of the late '60s, and uh, it's definitely a great pregnancy horror. But there are a lot of other really good ones. Um, Pregnancy and uterus horror, I would say, because uterus horror is more about like the functions of the uterus,
Right.
and it could be like about periods and all that. But I mean, The Brood is great. That's kind of a pregnancy horror.
Mm-hmm. It's like a womb horror. It's definitely
Yeah, like
related.
Yeah.
womb. I recently saw Prevenge,
Oh,
which is
right.
on Shudder, which was a very original take. It's very similar to Baby Blood, actually. It's like modern Baby Blood, kind of. The baby
Oh,
talks,
nice.
and
Mm.
it's the exact same premise, but it's definitely done. It's a female director, so it's done from a female
Oh,
perspective.
cool.
So
Yeah.
it's unique in that way.
Mm-hmm. Demon Seed is another great one. That's a bit more of a sci-fi kind of 70s version of Black Mirror sort of thing. It's kind of a tech horror.
Right.
But there is uh, pregnancy is basically the theme. Basically it's like if Siri wanted to inseminate a human and take over the
Mm-hmm.
world.
That's
So
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, that's a fantastic movie. It's kind of the same tone as The Brood, kind of same era as well.
Right.
So that's a great one too.
I would say Eraserhead, kind of.
Yeah, I think a
um,
Razorhead fits.
and let's see. There are a lot of films that just have pregnancy as like, large themes in the film. Like Prophecy is like an eco horror
Right.
from 1979, and pregnancy is a theme in that one. So I feel like pregnancy and horror really do go way back, even though there's not that many iconic pregnancy horrors that we still talk about today.
And
Right.
There's
it's also a big thing in sci-fi as well, like sci-fi horror.
Mm-hmm.
So many like crappy B movies, not even the fun ones, just like the hard to watch ones,
Yeah.
Mhm.
do have this as a theme. Inseminoid is one of them.
Yeah.
Right.
That one was, it could have been better.
One of
But
the
I
first
mean, the
ones that.
title, you know what you're in
yeah,
for.
yeah, yes, exactly. There's a few films that do tackle the theme of pregnancy that just like aren't that great. Gosh, there's
Mhm.
another horror film that I'm thinking of that is from the 70s that sucked, but did have this as a theme. I just don't remember what it's called, so I'll get back to you if I
It
think
was
about it. But
it was a popular theme in the 70s because of Roe v. Wade,
Right.
and the fears surrounding that. Not always aligning with my personal political beliefs, but definitely a common theme in the 70s.
Yeah, the one I always think about is, I mean, there's hints of it in Alien and the Alien franchise, but there's also that movie Species from the '90s that kind of deals with the roles a woman plays and uh, like how that men are kind of attracted to women until they want to get pregnant, and it
Mhm.
it
mhm.
fumbles in its themes, but it's there, and I feel like yeah, in a lot of science fiction and horror, there's always those kind of hints at it, and I feel like it does feel like it's time for, especially with the fears behind Roe versus Wade right now. It's like ready to be re-examined.
Yeah, it is. It's unfortunately still very topical. And I'm hoping that now filmmakers, when approaching the subject, do approach it from, a less exploitative light.
Mhm.
um,
Right.
and from a woman's perspective, because on, even on Baby Blood, there's like three producers. I think one of them is maybe a woman, but the rest of the team were all men. And I think that anything that comes up tonally that's a question might be because of that, where
Yeah.
you're not sure what its intentions were. it,
Yeah.
if maybe there was someone that um, could have some direct input into that theme, um, having someone with a uterus to
Right.
speak on that might be helpful in achieving the right tone. And who's to say they didn't, consult with people, maybe consult with the actress, who knows? Um, but yeah, definitely, I think that it helps, and I hope that films are doing that now.
Yeah. I definitely think it does become that thing, and I keep harping back to it. And even this movie, it has a lot of good themes. There's a lot of things to explore, but I do wonder what would have happened if like it had a female director or female writer, because it's not. Sometimes it's not the big things; it's the little things that kind of tip it over one way to another. And I feel like a lot of times, if it's you directing a community that you're not really a part of, it's hard for you to catch those little things, and it ends up screaming false to the audience that you're trying to talk to. And
Mhm.
so I do, yeah. It'd be interesting after you guys have released your short to kind of watch these two back to back and see the differences between um, how they present things and how it's presented in a different way. You know.
Absolutely. And you can kind of do that now with the film I mentioned earlier, Prevenge, because I'm just going to read the log line for the film. Um, Widow Ruth is 7 months pregnant when, believing herself to be guided by her talking unborn baby, she embarks on a homicidal rampage, dispatching anyone who stands in her way. So it's essentially, the same premise as Baby Blood, but it's written and directed and acted by Alice Lowe, a female director. And there's this really great essay in Women Make Horror by, I believe the author is Alison Pierce, where she examines Prevenge and how it's unique when compared to like older pregnancy horror. So yeah, I mean, we can look at it from that perspective now, and I would really love to re-examine Baby Fever compared to Baby Blood after we've finished.
Well, cool. And yeah, this movie. I'm curious as to what a sequel to this movie would be, because
It's a literal sequel. I'm looking it up right now. It's a
yeah, I
literal
saw that
sequel. Like it's
it's
15
Yeah, it's
years
like,
later.
does it like her baby comes back from the ocean? I was wondering that. I
it
don't
puts her
know.
on a trail of new evil, and he's coming to get her.
It's
So I guess it,
interesting.
it does come. I wonder. Yeah, I would be curious as to what, because it still stars Emmanuel. I mean, so it
Wow.
would be interesting to see where they went with it.
Return of a
Here,
Mhm.
I pulled up the logline. Should I read it?
Yonka.
Yes.
Do it.
15 years after the birth of her monster, Yonka turned her life around and became a policewoman. But new murders and bloody crime scenes put her on a new trail of evil, and he's coming to get her.
So it's
Also,
like
it's like
teenage blood.
yeah,
Wow.
It sounds
he
a
turned
little bit
her
like
life
The Fly
around.
Part 2.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. And
Yeah.
that was special, wasn't it?
Yeah. That's a rough
The Fly
ticket.
Part 2 is terrible, and it has one of the saddest scenes I've ever seen in a movie. So I
Oh.
give it a 5 out of 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I know what I'm watching after this, Emma.
The
I
Fly
was
Part
gonna.
2?
No, Lady Blood.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
That show's kind of like, all right, I'll give it to him. But I mean, yeah, this film is, I think it's phenomenal. If you can find it, you should definitely check it out. I think it's going to be worth your time. If you like Possession, I think you'll like this. And I think that the lead's performance is just fantastic and worth the watch.
Yeah. And I definitely think, even if you've never heard of uterus horror, I think this is a good one to maybe not. I think it's a good one to explore, just to see the different ways, the different themes. It definitely draws you in with all the different ways it goes, and I think it was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Hannah, any last thoughts?
On Baby Blood or
Yes.
on everything? Okay.
Well, we're gonna do Baby Blood first, and then everything. You jumped the gun.
Yeah, I think Baby Blood is a great pregnancy horror. It explores it in a much different way from like Rosemary's Baby or The Brood. It's a lot more gruesome. It's a lot more nuanced and complicated. And I think Emmanuel's performance is fantastic and really shows like the effects that pregnancy can have on a woman. And I definitely think it was intentionally feminist. It's taken me this entire podcast to kind of like ponder, but I think it was. And we decided that the names are very unisex, but the three producers have like very female sounding names. So we decided that they are women and that they potentially
Well, at
had an
least one of
impact.
them. At least one, for sure.
Yeah.
we're thinking maybe that had an impact. And then also, since Emmanuelle really brings it, I feel like she must have had some say in
I
the
do
direction that her
feel
character went, because it's so personal,
And she
so
signed on to
raw.
do another one, so I mean,
Yeah, it's so
Yeah,
raw.
it's a super cop, which I do want to watch now. So
oh yes.
I would like it if it's just like a malignant version of
Oh my
where it's just
god.
her fighting like with karate and stuff. That'd be awesome.
yeah.
I'm gonna pretend that that's what the sequel is. It goes off the rails. But cool. Okay, so now, do you guys want to say anything else? Obviously, the link is still at the bottom, guys. Go click on it. Even if you're not sure, go click on it and find out and read what they have to say. Watch the video and then see, and then just pay money. But what do you guys? Any last thoughts on everything?
Yeah, our Seed and Spark is in the bio. It's you can donate until October 30th, and then keep your eyes peeled for the film and our female, like, queer feminist perspective on pregnancy horror. And you can find us at www.monstrousfemmefilms.com. Our films are also on our website, and we're on social media at Monstrous Femme Films on Instagram and monstrous_femme on Twitter.
Cool. And I will also link to their social media at the bottom, just so you can follow them if you're also just interested in cool filmmakers. But yeah, go check those out. Go check out the link, and that'll be awesome. Yeah, I think that's it. What a great interview. We love to talk about themes and stuff, but a lot of times we get sidetracked by Leatherface's shenanigans. So I love that we talk so much about I think that's the difference between real filmmakers and me and Josh, just last dating it up.
Oh,
But
you
yeah,
guys are real filmmakers,
Well,
baby.
What do you mean? You
Jo-
guys made features. Come
Josh is
on.
definitely not.
I was more standing there and seeing it happen, so I wouldn't count myself as part of that.
But cool, yeah, that was very interesting. So thank you guys for having us on, or for
Thank-
having us on. You see, taking over.
You're welcome. Thank you
well,
guys.
thank you for having us, and I'm so glad that we got to do this. It's been kind of like a long, drawn out process getting to this point, and I really appreciate you being flexible
So
with us.
patient.
We're
so
very
flexible.
busy.
No problem.
um,
Right. Okay, so we will see you guys next week when we jump back into Texas for the last one, Leatherface. And then we'll have our special wrap up episode, which might come out before Leatherface, just because we want to release it on Halloween. But we'll see you guys
Terrible
next
timing.
time.
All right.
But it'll have a cool guest. But yeah, so go check this one out. Go check out Monstrous Femme, and we'll see you guys next time.